I'm Algernon Cash, and this is Eat, Drink Triad. Of course, your leading source for everything happening within the food and beverage industry. Always very thankful that you all join me for these conversations we put together. It's been a long time since we've had North Carolina House Majority Whip John Hardister join us. Many of you may recall that when COVID first struck and we created the Triad Food and Beverage Coalition, one of our initial conversations in town halls was with State Representative Hardister. And he has always been so kind to share time and give us some time and come in and update us on what's happening in Raleigh and just sharing some things that you might want to keep your eyes on. And so today we've got a really interesting discussion. Some of this is going to touch on food and beverage, but some of it's going to touch a lot on some economic development that could be happening in Greensboro. And of course, we do have an election season that should be underway right now, but is delayed. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. John, how are you, man? How you doing today?
Hey, Algernon, doing well. Great to see you.
Always, man. Always good to see you, and always appreciate you being willing to give us some time. And I know you and I had talked some months back about trying to get you back on the show, so we could update what was going on with the current legislative session. It was a long one for sure. You guys were in session for close to a year. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you're still in what y'all call a skeletal session. So session is not fully over yet. So, I didn't bring you on at that time because we had so many issues that were moving around and in flux. I sort of wanted to wait until we got to the end of the session. You all were able to get a $25.9 billion state budget passed and actually signed and sealed by the governor. Let's start there, Representative Hardister. Talk a little bit about the budget. I know that was something you'd been working on with the Republican leadership in the House throughout the session. I know it's a big package. Some people like parts of it. Some people don't like other parts of it. But more so, let's talk about what you're most proud of that's within that budget.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, thanks for having me on again. It's great to be with you. Yeah, it's been a long session. We're technically adjourned now temporarily, but we'll be back December 30th after Christmas. So it's like the session continues. They told me at first this was a part-time job, and that was definitely not true. It's a full-time responsibility, but I enjoy doing it. And great question about the state budget. I'm thrilled that we got it done. It feels like a weight has been lifted. It'd been over 2 years since we had a state budget. The good thing is, unlike the federal government, which will shut down for the state, if we don't pass a new budget by the fiscal year, then the previous budget just rolls over. But there is no increase in funding. There's any non-recurring funds will disappear. So there's definitely some consequences by not having a budget. But last year, as you alluded to, I mean, most of what we did was related to COVID. A lot of the money that we spent last year was for testing, tracing, hospital equipment, and things like that. But this is a great budget. I mean, you mentioned it's over $25 billion, but it's balanced. We've put money in savings. We've maintained our AAA credit rating, and we funded the core services of government, being transportation, education, public safety. Education funding increases by over $1.5 billion. We've put more money into all the core services of government. And another thing is that the increase in the budget does not outpace inflation or population. What that means is, as North Carolina grows in population, as we have inflation, we all know about that, the dollars we spend is not outpacing that growth. And that's a way to ensure that the budget is fiscally responsible. So that's something I'm proud of. But I think most notable is the economic incentive packages that we have in the budget. Of course, there's tax reform. We're lowering the corporate tax rate eventually down to zero. We've cut the personal income tax rate. Standard deductions are increased, and all that's going to help. But we have, a package to help with the Guilford Randolph mega site. And, we saw the Toyota announcement. So, super excited about that. And stay tuned. There could be a major announcement with PTI very soon, which is just next door to you. I know you're in Forsyth County, and just super excited about what's happening in North Carolina in terms of economic development.
Yeah, likewise. And we're going to certainly, within the course of our conversation today from our audience, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the economic development projects happening over in Guilford County right now, because they are, I think, will be very central and key to the future growth right here in the Triad region. I really strongly believe that the announcements and the wins don't just benefit Guilford County or Greensboro, but certainly will benefit the entire 12 or 13 county Triad region, quite frankly. So it's a big announcement. But keeping with the legislative session that you all are, obviously just coming out of, one thing you were not able to get done was the Medicaid expansion, and that's something that I think people from around North Carolina constantly look at. I would argue that maybe even folks within the food and beverage industry are taking a hard look at that, simply because you do have a lot of entry level and perhaps low income entry level workers within the food and beverage industry. What's the stance on Medicaid? It seems to be quite a divide there. I've even heard, Republican and State Representative Donnie Lambeth has come up with different types of packages where he thinks it could get done. Obviously, the governor wants to see it happen. I think there's some disagreement on the Senate side with Majority Leader Berger around, Medicaid expansion. Where are you at on the issue, Representative Hardister?
Well, I'm skeptical of a blanket Medicaid expansion for the able-bodied. I think it's more of a Band-Aid solution. Look, healthcare is a very important topic, and we need to explore ideas to expand access to affordable healthcare. Expanding Medicaid would not be a panacea. There's going to be a cost associated with it. Just like any government program, you're going to have long-term bureaucratic costs that are hard to predict. Now, that being said, I think there's going to be room for compromise in some areas, like mental health coverage. I think there's more that we can and should do to help people that have an addiction problem, that have a substance abuse problem, or mental health in general. I think there's more we can do to help veterans, even though we have a VA and that's a federal program. But if there's more we can do at the state level in that area, I think that's something that we can look at. And so there could be different types of Medicaid expansion that we'll consider. But what we've done is we've committed to take a really hard look at healthcare policy in general and to determine what are some steps that we could take as a state to kind of help with the health insurance market, to drive costs down, to make it more affordable. Whether you expand Medicaid or not, you'll continue to have these issues. And states that have expanded Medicaid are still having issues with private health insurance and things like that. So it's a big issue. And at some point we're gonna have to partner with the federal government, because so many of the regulations are federal. But it's something that we as a society cannot ignore. We have to find solutions. I know it's affecting everybody.
One thing the legislature did to try to bring down the cost of prescription drugs and just overall healthcare costs is that you gave some directives to North Carolina State Treasurer Dale Falwell to start looking at different cuts and adjustments that he can make to the state health plan and different changes. I actually had Treasurer Falwell on my Locked In show last week, and he was talking a lot about how some of the major hospitals are not particularly meeting their charitable care spending as it relates to some of the tax exemptions that they receive from the state. And I was looking at that report, and you've got about 20% of North Carolina households that have some kind of a medical collection debt on their credit report. And as you know, Representative Hardister, a lot of those folks tend to work in the food and beverage industry. We've moved into a world now where you can't get an apartment, you can't rent a car, you can't get good insurance rates, you might not even be able to get cable, depending on what your credit score is. Is there anything that the legislature can do? And I understand the commentary around Medicaid expansion. Anything the legislature can do that can try to, motivate hospitals to really try to equalize their charitable care spending as it relates to the tax exemptions that you all are giving them out of Raleigh?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that Treasurer Falwell has promoted is a clear pricing project. And the goal there is to promote transparency within healthcare costs. I'm a fan of our hospitals, and Guilford County Colon Health does a fantastic job, but I think there's some room for improvement in transparencies. People go to the hospital, they don't know, what things cost. And Treasurer Falwell has famously held up a document that's probably about this thick, where he asked the hospitals for information, And literally, if you thumb through, like everything's redacted on it. So I think transparency is a big critical key. And hospitals, they say they have small margins. They probably do, but they get tremendous exemptions on taxes. They don't pay property taxes. They operate as a nonprofit, but some of these hospitals are massive. And I think if we can promote transparency and partner with them on that, I think that's a good thing. And that's Treasurer Falwell has been fighting that battle, and it continues. And that's something we're probably going to examine as we go into session next year.
Yeah, it's something I've just been learning about. I've known Treasurer Falwell for many years. We're both out of Forsyth County, used to be members of the Piedmont Club together. So we just spent a lot of time together, even when he was in the legislature. And I just started learning more about the issue. But I do think, again, when you think about the food and beverage community and the workers that work in that community, and not just within our industry, the show is about our industry, but there's so many other industries where you've got low income workers that may be experiencing some kind of a credit problem or credit issue. But yet you've got these very large hospital systems that are receiving tax breaks from the same people that are experiencing the credit issue. But yet, they're not getting the relief they need. And I'm going to continue to follow it. I told Falwell I wanted to continue to talk about it into the new year, because I do think it's not only a big issue, but it's one of those issues that not a lot of people know about. If you're probably not in the inside or paying close attention, you may not be aware of it. One other thing you all were able to do in the latest session is some ABC reforms. And I saw some of that being announced. Real quickly, Representative, give us a recap on some of the reforms that you all made to ABC laws in the current session.
There's been a lot that we've done in recent years. I'll go back a little bit further. One thing that we did was we have a lot of craft breweries all over the state. They could not self-distribute beyond 25,000 barrels per year. We've raised that up to 100,000. Red Oak is in my district. That's been a really important subject for them. Distilleries are growing across the state, and now distilleries can sell their products directly to customers in their facilities. They can have a full ABC permit. They can sell mixed beverages. So we all talk about brew pubs. Now we have distillery, cocktail locations all over the state, and they have to follow all the applicable safety guidelines and things like that. But it's I think a critical part of our free market to allow these businesses to operate. And one thing that I'll note is that in this session we allowed social districts, and this is where let's say Winston-Salem wanted to define downtown a certain area footprint where you can carry your beverages around, outside on the sidewalk. And, think about like Savannah, Georgia, for example, they allow it there. And this allows local governments, whether it's the county or municipality, to set up a, social district. And, that's something that they could do it on a nightly basis or on the weekend. The local government has full discretion on how to do that.
Yeah, I watched that particular measure. I really like that measure that you all were able to pass, and have actually talked with Mayor Alan Joines about taking our entertainment district in downtown Winston and designating it. I've also met with Mayor Newell Clark. The city of Lexington is actually looking at taking their depot district and making it a social district so that you can carry your alcoholic beverage. I think that's a progressive move for the state of North Carolina. Also, really like the loosening for distilleries to be able to sell their cocktails on Sunday. That made perfect sense. Old Nick Williams is a big fan and friend of mine, and so I've enjoyed being able to go out there on my self-care Sunday and have a shot of bourbon. And so I think we've been making a lot of progress here in North Carolina. The number one question that I receive, no matter where I go, is can or will we ever see the privatization of selling alcohol here in North Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, I would support that. And I've said that before. And let me mention one other thing, Algernon. Several years ago, I received an email from a lady who, and it was on a Sunday afternoon. And she said that every Sunday morning I take my mom to church, and then we have brunch after that. And I would like to have a mimosa at 11 a.m., but can't do it. And I thought, we need to do something about that. So I worked with the Restaurant Lodging Association. We're able to get a bill going. We got it through and got it done. And now alcohol sales begin at 10 a.m. on Sunday. I wanted to just eliminate that law altogether. But the compromise is 10 a.m. and that's certainly better than 12 p.m. But to answer your question, I think yes, but it's going to take time. It's a matter of time. Most states have they've gone private with their sales for ABC. There's a way to do that and still have safety measures in place and control. And the way I would envision is you allow private companies to apply for a permit. They can open a store that could be tangential to what an ABC store is today, but they're probably remit back to local government. Some of the pushback comes from counties and cities because they derive revenue, off the sales. And so we have to work with the League of Municipalities on that. Money affects, as so many things. That's something we're going to have to try to rectify so that local governments feel like they're not going to lose their revenue. But ultimately, I think the state's better off if we have private system. I don't see any logical reason why the state should own and operate an ABC store. Or I don't know why we have to have these local ABC boards that are these governing bodies set up through the state government. It just doesn't make sense to me. I've been to other states where they have ABC stores that are privately owned and operated and are still regulated. But I've also been to states where you'll see spirits on the shelf in like a grocery store. So we're not even talking about going in that direction. We're talking about just privatizing the system. So you have a framework set up where private enterprise will run the stores, but they're still going to be regulated. And I don't think that'll impact the safety measure. I think that at the end of the day, really what we have now is just a relic of prohibition. And I think it will be privatized, but I don't know when. I think it'll take time.
And I would agree with you. I know there's a growing group of folks in the legislature on both sides of the aisle, quite frankly, Republican and Democrat, that would like to go in this direction. But then there is still the very ultra conservative part of the Senate and parts of the House where, and especially rural areas, rural counties, where they don't necessarily want to see this reform go in place. I think the thing that right now, John, that's really causing people to ask the question, and I know, like for myself, on a Friday night or Friday evening when I'm done for the week, I go down here to the local ABC store, I find me a good bottle of bourbon and get ready for the weekend. However, the last couple of months when I walk in there, not only may they not have that bottle of bourbon, but the shelves might almost be completely empty. So I think people are seeing this and wondering, okay, have we reached a point in time where it's time to privatize the ABC system? I want you to chime in on some of the shortages that we're seeing in ABC stores. But from my understanding, it's not necessarily because the state doesn't know what they're doing. It's moreover because of the supply chain disruptions, correct?
Yes, that's my understanding. Now, as a free market advocate, I think that you're more likely to have a system that's more nimble and more able to get supplies in if it's driven by the private sector. But that being said, we're seeing go to the grocery store, a lot of the shelves there are empty, and the same thing's affecting the ABC stores as well. The production of the products, and not just the production, but like the materials, like the bottles they go in and things like that. So there's the global supply chain issue, all that labor shortages affecting everybody.
Yeah, I would agree. So, glad to see you all were able to get some of those ABC reforms passed. You mentioned a moment ago with the state budget, one thing you're able to get passed that I think this is going to be really critical going forward is tax reform. The corporate tax rate is going to get zeroed out, I believe, over the next 3 years here in North Carolina. And I think that's going to make North Carolina so much more attractive to so many companies that are looking to move out of high tax states and environments like California, New York, and states in the Northeast. You see this mass exodus of companies going down to Florida. Even out of, even companies leaving Wall Street to go down to Florida and take advantage of their low tax or zero tax environment. Austin, Texas is benefiting. You're seeing Tesla move their plant from California to Texas. And I think part of what we're seeing even here regionally and locally with big companies like Toyota wanting to come into the state, And then even the more recent news about perhaps this airplane manufacturer Boom, who wants to come to Guilford County as well. Granted, I would say part of the reason they want to come here is because we got great talent, an incredible quality of life, low cost of living. But how much do you think some of the tax reform measures might be playing into their decision to locate in our state?
I think it's a major factor. Like you mentioned, the corporate tax, which is currently 2.5%, it's the lowest corporate tax in the country, will drop to zero. Most of our tax revenue comes from personal income and sales, and the personal income tax rate will drop from 5.25 down to 3.99. And the corporate tax, which really, let's pause there for a second. The corporate tax is passed to consumers, in the form of higher prices, or to employees in the form of lower wages and that kind of thing. So getting that down to zero will be a net positive for the state, because it'll continue to bring more companies in. We need more businesses here. That's how you get the tax revenue. I firmly believe there's an inflection point where if your taxes are too high, you drive companies out, you get less revenue. Seems like a paradox to some, but I think that certainly is the case, and the economic reality. But there's a lot of factors going on here. We have low cost of living. We have great transportation system. We're expanding broadband. We have a good railroad network. We have a port in Wilmington that's doing really well. And our workforce is very strong here. There's always room for improvement with education. And, I think with K-12, especially due to the pandemic, there's going to be some work to be done there. But if you look at our community college system, it's fantastic. And the UNC system is fantastic. And, I spoke with executives at Toyota, said, we looked at that. We absolutely feel that if we locate in the Triad region and we work with, for example, GTCC, we're going to get the workforce we need, and the business school at UNCG and engineering at A&T and so forth. So, workforce is critical. And I think right now we check all those boxes, and, that's why Toyota's coming. And I think that's why there's more announcements on the horizon.
Yeah, Toyota's going to create somewhere around, I think, 1,750 jobs, at least initially. There's already been talk already about a second phase that could create thousands more jobs. And then I think the thing that might be we can't quantify currently is all the other external suppliers who work with Toyota that oftentimes want to locate around a manufacturing facility like that, just to cut down on transportation costs for delivering their products to Toyota. What does this mean for Guilford County? What does it mean for the region? And what does it mean for all our restaurants and bars?
A game changer, transformative. This is the biggest economic news we've ever had in this region. And I think in North Carolina, the amount of investment and jobs, and the fact that these are really good paying jobs, and the epicenter might be the Guilford Randolph mega site, but the effects are going to be felt all over the Triad. And to your point, there'll be other companies coming too. It's not just going to be the Toyota battery facility, but ancillary companies will come in. You mentioned the aviation company at PTI. I think that's going to happen. And companies are going to look at North Carolina as a whole and say, wait a minute, this is a place where, you can do business, where it's open for business. You got the workforce, you've got the low taxes. And, I think that we're poised to be the #1 state for business in the country. And I think we already are. Forbes has rated North Carolina #1. And I think, the best is yet to come.
No, I totally agree. These are big announcements for the region, but obviously the state as a whole. And then for my audience, don't forget, we did have Mayor Newell Clark from Lexington on. They just landed a huge project, a 700-acre industrial park that they're going to be developing in conjunction with Samet Properties. They're going to be they're the developer. And I was down in Lexington speaking at the Lexington Chamber's Holiday Luncheon not too long ago. And while I was in town, I can't say who, but while I was in town, they were entertaining another big company that was looking around Lexington to potentially locate there. So a lot of things happening in Lexington. I'm a huge believer and a cheerleader when it comes to regionalism. I think all of our communities in the Triad need to be working together. Winston, Greensboro, High Point, all points in between and around. And if we're working together and really leveraging each other's strengths, we can do something really, really special for the entire state. One of my last points, Representative, I mentioned earlier, we're supposed to be in election season right now, but that's been delayed a little bit. You all just went through a redistricting process. You issued the new maps. Of course, the Democrats did sue, as what was expected. But that's also, I think, delayed filing and delayed the primary day. And there's been all types of turmoil going on right now with the elections. When do you see some of that being clear? And then I think the big question from our audience, are you seeking re-election?
Well, I think turmoil is the right word to describe it. I mean, the election was on and then off and then on and then off again. It's part of the process, though. We have three branches of government. At this point, the judicial branch has shut things down, but we're confident that we're going to win the trial and ultimately get things back on track. So, my prediction is that this will be a delay, that will get things back on track. Filing will probably happen in February, and then the primary be in May, then of course the election be in November. But yeah, it's frustrating for the voters.